Okay, I just need to share my screen. It's really hard to do that. Share my screen. Where's it? Is that here? Yep, okay.
Amusing, is that what we're starting with?
Okay, everyone, welcome to this MLA annual call webinar to discuss animal health and welfare. In particular, for this webinar, we will be discussing the mulesing, the blowfly, and the worms terms of references. And we've got a couple of experts from MLA Online as well. First of all, my name is Irene Sabota. I'm the Program Manager for Consultation. One of my jobs is to run the annual call and also the regional consultation that sits behind the annual call. The regional consultation is where MLA goes out and talks to producers across the country about their priorities for RDNA. Sorry, I just got a message that someone can't hear anything. Phoebe, can you just respond to Johan Greif, please?
Is he dialed in on the phone, I wonder?
Johan, no, I bet you he's not. That's probably the problem. Sorry about that. We got a few technical issues, but we'll get there. This is the first time we've done a webinar for our annual call. I've got Jim Rothwell sitting here next to me. He's ready to take over in a minute. And we've got Johan Schroeder online as well. Not with camera, unfortunately, but he's certainly there to answer any questions you may have. Before we get that far, I just want to quickly run through with you the timeline for the annual call this year. For those of you that have engaged in the annual call in the last couple of years, you'll notice that we do make changes every year. This is in response to feedback we get from both producers and from stakeholders and researchers. We try to make this process work for everyone. We're still learning. It's that we've only done 2 full cycles of the annual call so far, and this is our 3rd call. So there is continuously some improvement to take place. The key change this year is that we've pulled the process a little bit forward to make more time for producers to review the proposals before the big harvesting period and before Christmas, and also make sure that researchers and also MLA staff actually get a Christmas holiday. Sorry, the call went live this year, last week, on the 27th of September, and it'll stay open until the 30th of October, which is just 1 day short of 5 weeks. This is another change we've made this year to allow nearly 5 weeks for the preliminary application stage. The key thing to remember at the preliminary stage is that you're, as a researcher, you're talking to producers. Producers are the main ones that are reviewing proposals for the preliminary stage. So keep in mind that if you use very technical language and producers can't understand it, they're likely to rate your proposal lower than they probably would have done if they did understand what you were saying. So really keep that in mind. I should say that if you look on the MLA website, there is in fact a fact sheet there, or a little a document we've pulled together with the feedback MLA has given to proponents and to everyone over the last couple of years, just to give you a chance to look at what can be improved. So I encourage you to look at that document. Our producer panels will review preliminary proposals in November and December, and MLA will then call for full proposals on the 29th of January, and that process will be open for 4 weeks. Full proposals will be assessed by an independent expert panel that will meet at the end of March. After that, we've got the REGMI panel meeting in early May in Sydney, and their job is to provide the final advice to MLA on the priorities and the projects to fund in the next year. One of the reasons we've pulled the process back this year is also to try to see if we can't get the projects up and running in early July. So that's certainly our hope and our aim, but obviously things may still be pushed a little bit out in the future. Thank you. Is there any more questions around the annual call timing? You're most welcome to contact me. My details are on the website. But if nothing further, I will pass over to Jim to talk you through the terms of reference documents.
Okay. Well, the first one, thank you, Irene. The first one is the mulesing proposal, and if you look there in the background, you can see the 4 areas and gaps that the producer panels identified as needs that haven't been or weren't being addressed by current R&D. So that's how those 4 bullet points on the mulesing terms of reference came up, and those 4 points repeat in the other 2. So I thought it was just worthwhile to mention them. And our motive here is to provide some practical advice and costings for prime land producers to move away from mulesing principally their dams. So I think, Irene, without further ado, I welcome questions on that first proposal, evaluation of the costs and benefits of ceasing mulesing from the attendees.
Thank you, Jim. So feel free to take the microphone and ask questions to Jim. There doesn't appear to be any questions, Jim.
Does anyone want to ask or discuss anything about the ceasing mulesing terms of reference before we move on to the vote?
Hello,
Hello?
Jim, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah.
Jim, is Johan here. How are you?
Oh, hi, Johan. Good, thank you. And you?
I'm well. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't get the introduction. I missed it. But when you ask now for questions, is this mostly on the mulesing? Is this mostly an extension activity to take people from from non-mulesing onto from mulesing scenario onto a non-mulesing, or is there a research component in here as well?
It's the practicalities, economics, and costs. So I'd call it a development project. We're not. I think the tools and the knowledge, the worm boss, the models, the chemicals, the management practices are well known. What we need to do is hold the hands of the prime land producers who feel it necessary to mule their mothers, or the prime land mothers.
Okay.
And
I understand now.
Yeah. So it's principally in that transfer of knowledge and expertise into the hands of prime land producers, particularly as they manage their ewe flocks.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good. Any further questions on the mulesing one? Okay. Well,
that's fine. Let's dip on. I think that hopefully that just indicates that the terms of reference have been well written and understood by those interested.
But of course.
I have been disappointed in the past. Now, the next one I propose is that we look at the sheep blow one. We've proposed new lines of work into the control of sheep blowfly. And once again, you can see the logic behind why this has come forward as a call. It's been in response to the producers' needs and an iterative process where we looked at what we are doing in this space and the potential to address blowfly strike in a novel way in light of the molecular revolution, I suppose, essentially. So this has been crafted more as a scoping study to give us some information and a literature review. What are things that are prospective? What are things that we could do? We know the Lucilia genome has been completed. Are there things that we haven't done before that we should be doing which could solve the problem of sheep blowfly strike, period? So that's how this has been written. It's novel, it's risky, and our normal practice in such a situation is to get a detailed baseline literature review and some smart people thinking about what the possibilities and options are, and maybe give us a bit of a hand with what that's likely to cost. And then we would have something solid to go back to MLA and to our producers and ask for money.
Thank you, Jim. We'll take questions on this terms of reference, please.
Hello, Jim and Jan again.
Yep.
With the when you say the novel work, we are involved in this area at the moment with novel work, but looking at the attractiveness, what attracts low price to specific sheep. But in this, we've been working on older sheep, but in this case, are you only going to look at land or older sheep as well?
Well, I think the problem for the sheep meat industry is the ewes. So, no, I don't think we'd only be interested in lambs.
Okay. So on the, we got from our work that we've done, we think that the odor attractions and the environment for the flies, this is two independent things, and this is what we want to follow up. So I think that it could be quite novel. And we found that, for example, although we know that DAX is quite the most important trait in our environment in the winter rainfall, we first see that there's actually sheep with a lot of DAX never get struck. So there's something else happening here, and we think it's to do with some repellent. So we would be like to investigate that and see if there's some opportunities there that one can then develop to see if you can develop some technology to overcome that.
Johan, would there be a focus on prime lamb mothers and crossbreds?
Yes, well, we think of using the current genetic resource flock, which MLA is that we have here at Katanning, to do, because we got a merino line and got the border Leicester merino crosses here, and we are considering using those animals in the genetic resource flock for that study here. We have also got some additional resources that's coming from AWI that's been working on the breech strike resource flock, which is very well characterized, that we can identify very susceptible and resistant animals very easily. But in this case, we think of expanding add some value to the existing genetic resource flock and do some of this work repeated, these sort of new trends that we found out on that flock.
Yes, Johan, I think that would be of interest. I'd counsel you to couch the application in terms of relevance to the red meat industry. Obviously, the wool industry has been spending a lot of money over the years in this area, but we're addressing needs of the prime lamb sector, particularly the ewes. So just keep that in mind. We're not necessarily looking at, broad brush stuff. Anyway, I think that's clear what our needs are. That's not to say that novel blue sky stuff isn't of interest, but the needs are very much directed to that the prime lamb production aspect of the sheep industry.
Yeah, well, the next, I think with the next, you got another topic on vaccines and on the problem that with diarrhea. So I'll just follow up on that when we get to that topic.
Sure.
Any other questions for Jim?
We have some famous sheep blowfly experts on the line.
Sue has put up her hand, Sue.
Yes, I assume you can hear me.
Yes.
You talk about a very comprehensive lit review, so that, and given the points you've already mentioned in relation to that would suggest to me that it'd be very much a collaborative approach to that review, not necessarily based on say one person doing that review, given the scope of trying to identify novel opportunities and pathways. Is that?
Yes, that's true,
correct?
Sue, and you can be sure that the producer panels, as Irene said, they vet the first round would be very interested in collaborative ventures and, you know, utilising a breadth of expertise rather than a sole operator. However, I mean, we would assess the proposals on their merits. But I think in principle, for this kind of thing, a review with 2 or 3 experts would be most desirable.
And again, from what you've said earlier, basing that review from the perspective of industry practices and where they could go in future.
Well, I think so. I think there's certainly that practical application is of interest, but also you know, we are opening the door here to set the scene for some significant investment into the future in some novel prospective areas. I think our producers and our sheep meat producers would be susceptible to, you know, a new paradigm and new ways of doing things. But, you know, optimising the existing tools and methods is fine. That probably fits more into the first proposal, into the first terms of reference, however.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else?
Sure.
Okay. If there are no
further ones on the sheep blowfly proposal?
We'll go to the last one.
I hope we don't go shorter than the Tyleria group went. Okay, so the third one is
just very practical advice.
Is looking at sorry, someone wanted to ask something before we move on to the gastrointestinal nematodes?
Really on the ground stuff to work with.
Could we get some background noise?
Yeah, no. You've got ideas already.
Hello.
Hello? Yes?
Hi, it's
Actually,
Tony
if you're
Boxwell.
chatting and not asking a question, perhaps you might mute your phone, please.
Just a good speaker.
Great. Good day, Tim. Tony Boxwell here with Andrew Cotsey. From CSIRO. We're just interested to know, is this just a call for a review, or are you interested in specific projects associated with the control of fly strike?
Look, I think we're leaving the door open to both those options. I think for a big investment in new work, we would need a review and consider that to be stage 1. However, because that will then require reordering of financial priorities internally to spend levy money, and I think we could. But in terms of this call, we would be looking at more modest projects if you wanted to propose a more modest project rather than the overall review and background scoping.
Okay. All right. So if we have some ideas, as long as it's a modest project, we could certainly put that forward. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we have an interest, just to flag, in fly strike vaccine work and looking at specifically targeting the parasite. And we've been doing a fair bit of work here, getting some initial candidates under our belt, and we're ready to sort of move on with that. So just looking for the right way to move with the industry with that. So just to flag that with you.
So parasite vaccine directed at the fly, with that idea of getting serum secretions and so forth. Okay. That you guys and Andrew in particular have done work in that area in the past, well, absolutely, and we are reflecting what the producers want, which is some novel ways of having a crack at this intractable problem. So they've opened the door for some new stuff in my view.
Yeah, certainly we've worked in this area in the past, but things have really moved on. And we have a number of sort of new ideas of candidates and ways to move forward. So, yeah.
And that would be a component of that would be a component of a scoping document. Then the vaccine would be a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andrew, that's right. You know, you need to set the scene for us with regard to what's been done, and then show how what you're proposing is prospective. No, we would be very susceptible to that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, with this, the focus is very much, I see, on vaccines. And in this case, I haven't got the document in front of me, but you also have indications that you...
No, Johan, this is the blowfly one. It's not necessarily focused on vaccines. The gastrointestinal nematode one has got a vaccine focus, but I don't think we've limited the blowfly one to vaccines at all.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we were on that. Okay.
Yes, sorry, Mum.
Any more on the sheep blowfly before we move on to the worms? Okay. All right. Then the third one, I guess you probably read the slightly flowery prose in the preamble about the third world, but the reason that's in there, just to give you a little bit of background, is the sheep veterinary conference I went to, where the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and FAO were speaking about the need for effective therapies in the third world. And I thought, well, there could be an opportunity in the long term to do some stuff together with some of those people if we find a way that's going to fix problems in the sheep meat industry of Australia and is helpful for the third world goats and sheep. So that's why there's that talk there about smallholders, and the fact is that more than 90% of the sheep and goats are in the third world owned by small groups of running small groups. So that's just a bit of background there. We haven't gone all soft and altruistic though. So I think I've tried to explain the logic here, that there's got to be time to have a fresh crack at Trichostrongylus, and looking at scouring. So it's partly to do with scouring, and it's also partly to do with productivity.
Good. Thank you. We'll open up for questions.
Johan here again, sorry, Jim. We've been looking at this, of the scouring, quite for some time, and we just recently did some work to look at the underlying causes and whether we can identify causes of the hypersensitivity scouring. And we got some clear, we think it may be, the scouring may play a part there, and the worms may play a part, but it looks as if there's bacteria playing a part. If you look at some of the lymph nodes distributed through the gastrointestinal tract, that it's not only that it's bacteria maybe, or some sort of infection that's happening there. So we would be interested in working on this one, because we got a good immunology group, the Barry Marshall Centre at UWA, and I in the department, the vaccine production system down at Albany, and we got the resources well characterized for worms and for scouring, which we can utilize, and we can also do that on do some work on the genetic resource flock here at Katanning.
Are you talking about lambs, or are you talking about adult sheep, Johan?
I'm talking about both, because we can do it on lambs as well. But if you have this chronic problem of scouring, which is in our environment quite a big thing, it looks as if that's a bacterial infection. Worms may play a part, but when we open up the animals, it looks it's not clear whether it's such a big thing on the worms here in our environment.
Sure. No, I think as I say, that'll go to the producers, and I imagine the Western Australian Meat Council would be quite interested in that program of work, Johan. So, and we have done some diagnostic work. Johan Schroeder might wish to speak on the diagnostic work we've done with bacterial and protozoal scouring, so the diagnostics are there. But in terms of crystallising that as an etiology, I think why not?
Yeah, Johan, I would urge you, if you were to put such a proposal together, to make contact with Una Ryan at Murdoch. She just recently completed that diagnostic report that Jim refers to, diagnostic method, and she came up with a multiplex PCR that identifies 10 different organisms which potentially cause diarrhea in sheep, 3 nematodes, 4 protozoa, and 3 bacteria. So, she could be a very valuable resource for you to tap into.
Yep, I'll do that. Thank you.
Any more on this gastrointestinal nematode proposal?
So I can see you still got your hand up. But is that from earlier, or do you have a question again?
That was Sue.
That might be an old one. Yeah.
Sue Mortimer.
Jim, could I ask a question? Jim?
Yeah, of course.
Jim.
Who's this?
Andrew Kotze.
Oh, hi, Andrew.
Yeah. Just in the blowfly one, that gives one example of revisiting non-chemical means, so that's the whole fly genetics, some fly genetics work. But I gather from what you said before that the scoping document lit review, you would have it would be sort of unbounded. You'd be wanting something that would look at all possible means of control: drug, vaccine, genetic, biological, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think if we're going to venture into this area, which has been dominated by AWI, we need to have a sound basis for it, and we need to identify prospective areas that are of particular interest to us, which is the sheep meat industry. And the real driver, well, one of the drivers for that is this mulesing issue, but, blowflies are a problem for all sheep, of course. So, yeah, look, I would really welcome a broad review, Andrew, and looking at all the prospective areas.
Yeah, and likelihood of success ratings type.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. And the way we would use that then would be to frame the ask for money. So that would be then. If we're going to massively invest in this area, we need a sound basis for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
You have a last chance to ask questions to Jim. Okay, if there's nothing else, I just want to remind you that you can find both Jim's and Johan's details on the terms of reference documents on the MLO's website. There's also that document that's been compiled this year, looking at feedback MLO has given to proponents in the last couple of years. Really just a help to you to try to put together a really good proposal. So have a look at that. You'll find that as a link under the terms of reference. We still encourage you, if you think of anything else, do get in contact with Jim and Johan. The call is open still for another 4 weeks, so there's plenty of time to discuss with MLO. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you to Jim. Thank you to Johan for answering questions. And thank you for everyone else to attending this really first webinar series for MLO's annual call.
Thanks, Irene.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.